I always wanted to be like a games critic. I looked at that world, and obviously, I was very, close with John, Total Biscuit, when he was alive, and he was like a hero of mine. I fucking was knocked out that I got to meet him through esports and got to work with him and do podcasts with him and things like that. It was a really big deal to me because, he was one of the people that kind of showed me that, you could just be from the northeast of England and you could just talk about video games and you could just put it on YouTube and you can have a career from that. And not only have a career from that, you could actually go on to be like one of the foremost critics, in your field. And so, I went through a long period of time where it was kind of like what informed the journalist I would go on to become in esports was, kind of what would John do? What would John say? This is a guy who, challenged a lot of the kind of status quo opinions around gaming. He didn't really care about access. He just wanted to say what his viewers and listeners needed to know, and sometimes that was deeply unpopular. And obviously, he unfortunately got placed in a culture war he absolutely had nothing to do with and repudiated. But because in 2014, games journalists took it upon themselves to warp reality and lie, he got placed adjacent to people he sort of never was, and obviously people still impugn his reputation on that basis. Now, for me, I do have to say, I'd always thought about like tangentially moving across and maybe segueing into talking about video games. But I look at kind of, what people did. Like, it just feels like esports being a niche within a niche. Like, I look at what happened to like a lot of mainstream games critics, and it was like, you know what, I don't really need that kind of shit in my life, frankly. Esports is bad enough dealing with the nutcases over here. So I've never took the plunge, but occasionally there will be something so kind of stupefying and something that you can't ignore that I do sort of wade into it. And occasionally what ends up happening is I do get people, on the YouTube channel, and they come in and they go, oh, okay, they're new, is this a games guy? And then it's like the other 10 videos that come after that of me talking about fucking esports and stuff they don't understand, and you'll see like these little spikes in subs and then dips. So I'm sure that's going to happen again. But anyway, I want to talk about this Black Myth Wukong game, which to me, I can't tell if it is the most unfairly maligned or the most astroturfed piece of shit I've seen in a while in gaming. It's very strange. I mean, I'll show you the trailer. It's, as far as I can tell, it appears to be a very standard Dead Souls clone, of which there are many, but none, of course, have that quintessential From Software formula, which they really perfected with Elden Ring. And the one thing that a lot of Dark Souls and Souls-light games kind of don't really understand about Dark Souls is, well, it's twofold. First is that I'd say key to the Dark Souls is obviously the challenge, and when you dumb down combat in a Souls-light, you're kind of defeating the point of the game in the first place. It's why I never got on board with games journalists always saying, oh, they need difficulty sliders in Dark Souls games. It's like, there's difficulty sliders in the game. They're just not difficulty sliders. Just do a magic build, you fucking pussy. There you go. You are now playing Dark Souls on easy mode. Well done. Enjoy. And like, this is how a lot of journalists don't even play these fucking games, because they don't understand there are ways that you can approach these games. It's the same with bashing your head against a wall in Elden Ring. You can over level. You can do all sorts of stuff. There's certain builds that are ridiculous. Anyway, so that's the first thing a lot of these games get wrong. They generally don't fully commit to the idea of a challenge. And then the other thing that they have a tendency to get wrong is kind of, they think it's all, it's all about scope and and boss battles, and they don't really go into, building kind of a world with environmental storytelling where you go through it and everything. And it's like, in Dark Souls, a lot of the lore aspects are just sort of there. You just have to pick up on them intuitively. You have to listen to people. You have to take optional conversations, and kind of a lot of these games don't bother with that. I think like Neo or something like that. So anyway, whenever these Dark Souls games get released, I'm always kind of a little bit like, why would anyone care? Why would anyone care? It's like it's not a From Software game. So I'm always a bit wary about them. And so look, I'll just show you the trailer of the Wukong game, and you can tell me what you think about it if you haven't already played it. I know some of you in the chat will have. Now listen, maybe that looks like your cup of tea, right? That's fine. It's totally up to you. Obviously, Wukong is a real mythological Chinese figure, and this game takes lots of, not even inspiration, just directly lifts from the annals of Chinese mythology to sort of tell a story, and that's fine. I've just played a million games like this at this point because I'm a 39-year-old man who got told I look like I'm 65 today, which is interesting. But I'm kind of just over it, I don't need to play another game like this. I don't need to play another game like this ever in my life. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't play the DLC of Elden Ring. I'm kind of I'm tapped out on it. I've done it. It's just been done now. It's like I'm more interested in other stuff. So anyway, that's the game. That's what it is. Now, how does it get mired in culture war bullshit? Well, I have to take you back in time to when the game was being developed, and there were a number of articles around this studio, Game Science, who were framed as an indie developer, and you can see here, this is from November 2023 on everyone's favorite website, IGN. How Black Myth Wukong developers' history of sexism is complicating its journey to the West. You see, what had happened was, and when we get into it, we're going to kind of talk about some things that are like sort of the direction that games journalism went into, which is this is very much the kind of story that really has took over the industry, where it's like somebody at studio did and said some things we don't like. We're going to do exposés and all of that. And it's kind of sad because there are genuine stories that do need to be told in the video games industry. There are, I mean, in particular, working conditions, labor conditions are terrible at most games development studio. I've talked a lot down the years about crunch, and it's why I kind of, I'll give Jason Schreier a pass because he at least does tackle those kinds of stories. Of less interest to me is this person liked a tweet by Alex Jones or something like that, and therefore we want to, attack the game, and it's just like we're over it now, guys. You've had 10 years of unfettered access to cancel culture by being the dominant cultural belief system. People are just kind of tired of it now. It's got really fucking boring. That's the key component. It's not even that people agree or disagree. They're just bored of it. So this was all the rage among the games journos, that game science were definitely bad, and Black Myth Wukong, their game was going to be problematic in some way. And so look, I'll read you this article here. The global buzz around Black Myth Wukong may be gradually reaching fever pitch, but the excitement over the game feels like it has peaked back in China, with local publications referring to Black Myth Wukong as the pinnacle of locally made AAA games. When it was introduced in 2020 with a 13-minute pre-alpha trailer, Black Myth Wukong was met with international acclaim for its sleek cinematic visuals and high-octane, high-fantasy combat scenes. Within a day of its release, the video had garnered 2 million views on YouTube and 10 million views on Chinese streaming site Bilibili. Always love that. At the height of this commotion around Black Myth Wukong, Game Science even had to fend off unsolicited visitors at its studio by putting up a notice outside its premises, according to a report from IGN China. One intruder who thought the office would be vacant on a Saturday afternoon broke into the building through a window to pay the studio a visit, a stunt that shocked the employees who were working at the office over the weekend. In another incident, a visitor abruptly turned up at the door, declaring that they had quit their job to participate in the game's development. Now, I'm always skeptical when I hear stories like this right out of the gate, because you want to generate fake hype, and I'll show you an example of this in a moment. But when you want to generate fake hype about a game, you say, oh, there's this crazy thing that happened. This guy was so excited for the game, he came to the studio and said he quit his job and he wanted to work with us. And you go, okay, do you have an attribution to that? What was the fella's name? And then all of a sudden the details get really fucking hazy. And I've seen this a lot, not just in gaming, but in lots of industries where people want to create fake hype. I mean, it's a big thing like in the movies, right? Like if you know what one of the things they used to do in the 80s, right? Which I wouldn't know much about it because obviously, I was barely there because I'm so young and cool. But back in the 80s, one of the things I'm told they used to do is whenever there was a movie that they wanted to push as being like super scary and fucking like, wow, you won't believe it, what they would do is they would say, oh, people were fainting at the studio, people were vomiting in the aisles, like, just chunder everywhere. We had to fucking take them out. We had to stop the screening because somebody like fainted, and we had to call an ambulance and all this stuff. And it was like, I must have heard this said about so many movies. Like when The Exorcist got re-released, they were saying it about that. They said it obviously during the original release. For a lot of 80s body horror movies in general. The Fly was one. Red Letter Media got their review of the Cronenberg remake of The Fly. Excellent movie. Up at the moment. You should check that out. But yes, The Fly, that was a classic one where everyone was fucking fainting and all this stuff. And what it does is, it because it sounds so shocking and salacious, journalists, there's a saying in journalism, and it's mainly for editors, and it's that the challenge of journalism and being an editor is to fill the space. That's the challenge, is to fill the space. That's kind of like the industry slogan. And what do we mean by that? Well, it's story selection. I have think of all of the totality of news in the world. What do I put into a paper, right? Like what do I put into a magazine? I can select anything. So what goes in? Well, the selection, the challenge is to fill the space with the most compelling stuff. And obviously, if you're a rag like The Sun, you just don't really care. It's like whatever is going to make people pick up a newspaper and read and fucking regurgitate lies and nonsense and misinformation in a greasy spoon calf on their way to a shit job, and then so they'll come back and they'll buy the paper tomorrow because it contains more of the stories that they like to talk about, the kind of the fantastique, things that are gonna essentially make for an interesting story, that are gonna take you away from the mundane for a moment. And so stories like this incredible thing happened, you'll never believe it. By the way, don't ask any of the details. Don't ask where it happened. Don't ask who it was. The fundamentals of journalism, we're just going to conveniently leave those out. And you've all got stories like this. You have seen an example of this. You have probably shared an example of this, particularly in the age of social media. So right out the gate, I don't necessarily believe a lot of this. China is very opaque in terms of getting information in and out, and what you hear is very often curated and controlled in some way, although that is increasingly not becoming the case. And so when stories do make it out of China and they get reported in the West, generally it's gone through a process. And this is obviously true in even little things like this. So again, be skeptical is kind of what I'm saying here. Anyway, for an indie studio that has only released mobile titles within the country, this widespread acclaim over Black Myth Wukong is a largely unprecedented feat, particularly for a game that has not been released yet. But beneath the luster of this Souls-like, is a studio plagued by claims of sexism. Okay, right, well, you've got my attention. Sexism bad. Tell me about it. Several posts have surfaced from Chinese social media site Weibo, written by individuals from within the studio, that contain multiple references to genitalia and sexual innuendos. These have provoked a backlash among some in the games community, many of whom are women. This was coupled by recruitment posters by the studio, produced in 2015, which featured images and headlines that point to a culture of ingrained sexism in game science. IGN spoke to several women familiar with gaming culture, as well as the games and technology industry in China, many of whom requested to be anonymous for fear of backlash from fans of game science and the broader games community. In the eyes of many female players, game science has a notably negative reputation, said Jen, a pseudonym, a Chinese games designer who's now based outside of China. I admire their dedication and work. I had high expectations for their game until I came across their misogynistic remarks around 2021, which were reported in the news. IGN reached out to Game Science ahead of the publication of this article, but the studio did not respond to a request for comment. So anyway, we can skip through all of this. This is a little history of the studio, and it talks about Feng Ji, one of the co-founders of Game Science, and it says here, Feng, in particular, has an outsized presence within the games industry, with a penchant for sharing introspective insights on games development, peppered with crude metaphors and boorish innuendos. In 2007, so, we're keeping it current, he penned a lengthy article titled, Who Has Murdered Our Game?, where he delved into the difficulties of games development in China. Feng compared failed projects to stillborn babies, given that many games had to cease development despite being worked on for a year or so. He then brought up this analogy. Is it because the sperm isn't virile enough? Is the pregnancy too short? Is the baby lacking nutrition? Are the doctors in charge of cesarean sections lowly skilled? Why can't we produce a healthy child, meaning product? Now, I'm probably going to get cancelled here. I don't consider that in the least bit shocking or sexist. Just saying. I think if you know a little bit about Chinese history and Chinese culture, particularly in the modern era, you will know, obviously, with certain programs to limit how many children you can have, there is a very flippant and cold approach to talking about these issues. And so immediately I am like, okay, we are really reaching already. Now, there is some stuff, obviously, I'm going to condemn, and it's shocking and blah, blah, blah. But this is one of the things that the journos do. It's never enough to have the thing. They've got to make it look like it's systemic, because that warrants the time and effort and energy that they put into the selective outrage. And unfortunately, I find it somewhat stupefying in general to be like, oh, did you know there's sexism in Chinese society? Oh, well, duh. Yes, I think we've talked quite a bit, actually, over here in the West, as is our way, about other cultures and how they don't necessarily chime with our values. Yes, we have a tendency to do that quite a bit, don't we? So, It's already weird because you will notice we all are very comfortable doing business with all of these regimes around the world that we then similarly want to kind of pick little isolated incidents about and go, oh, yeah, that's terrible what happened. Well, okay, right, but who's paid for all that advertising on your website, right? So let's... Also, I mean, you will notice the journos, they all went after, including IGN, they all went after this studio in the year build-up to the release of the game. And now when you click on one of their websites, it's just Black Myth Wukong, like ridiculous splash ads all over it. And it's like, well, how bothered were you really? It kind of feels a bit fake and contrived. So anyway, we get into the Weibo posts, that garnered significant backlash. Feng penned his thoughts about the video going viral on Weibo. The post was largely about his self-criticism over the video's lackluster production quality, with Feng Ji stating that the 13-minute B1 looks like it was carelessly pieced together, and that the frame rates of 100,000 heavenly soldiers have dropped so hard that they have caused PTSD. But this was accompanied by several innuendo-laden lines. Not innuendo, guys. We can't have that. In the first line, Feng wrote, I want to expand my circle and hire more people, get licked until I can't get an erection. I don't really know what that is going for. Several lines down, he also added, I know you just happen to be a little depressed. It is my honor to provide you with some comfort in the lower half of your body. He later doubled down with a separate comment saying that I got wet after watching it a couple of times. The pressure in my crotch is immense. And you can see these are the translations there. Now, I mean, just sounds like he's horny on main, whatever. Fine, I guess. Probably lost in translation as well, I'll add. Weird, sure. To many who were familiar with Feng's mannerisms, these were just the harmless quirks of a games developer who, as vulgar as he may seem, is steadfast about his vision for game making. Several fans have excused his behaviour, with him chalking this up to a straight-talking passion for game making. There's no need to debate. Many literary giants also use foul language. Let's just experience the work ourselves. A single beauty can cover up all the ugliness, so let's just wait for the results. But I will support it because of their courage and that they were able to put so much culture and history into the game, read one response. But to other industry professionals and players, these comments felt unnecessarily crude and off-putting. I noticed that the company never really addressed the critiques directly. I know that they probably removed some of the stuff that they previously posted, but they never apologized or never acknowledged that, says Kathy, another pseudonym, a Chinese game developer who requested anonymity. Personally, I feel that as an industry professional, I would probably still play the game just because it's really important for the industry itself, but I probably wouldn't promote the game anyway. I wouldn't be supportive. So far, what we're really talking about is a guy saying things people don't like in public. And I would also go so far as to say, not really pushing the sexist envelope all that much, in my opinion, so far. But maybe I'm a dinosaur. What do I know? Anyway, then there is a separate Weibo post by lead artist and co-founder Yang Qi back in 2013. So again, we're going back 10 years. Which also, I hate doing this thing, and I just want to commit this to video. I hate doing this thing, and it's actually central to a lot of cancel culture or whatever the fuck we're calling it these days. You can't bottle a zeitgeist. You can't retcon a zeitgeist either. So you can't bring a zeitgeist from 2007, 2013 hurtling into the present day, and you can't retcon a zeitgeist and go, we're all super fucking, considerate here in 2023, so we should go back in time and apply that standard retroactively in 2013. And we do this all the time, and it's absurd. It's absurd on its face to do it. you can't simply go back and go, listen, you said some fucked up shit in 2013. It wasn't fucked up in 2013, though. Actually, if you go to the turn of the century, edgy humor was very much in. People didn't take as much umbrage with certain slurs and certain words. There were episodes of South Park, for example, literally dedicated to the two spiciest slurs of all, kind of breaking down the potency and hurtful power of those slurs by making a point that because language evolves over time, do they have the same potency anymore? And everyone went, nah, actually, I don't think they do. And let's get into a Call of Duty fucking lobby and let's just let them fly. And was the world a better place back then? I'll let you decide. But anyway, here we are in 2023, where we have to have a very serious referendum on language and everything else. And you can't really apply the standards of today back then. And yet journalists, they know this. The journalists know this. And yet they do it when it's convenient. Very often I find, and this is the end of the point, we'll get back to the main thrust of the topic, but very often I find what they do is the same people that want to say these words are absolutely immutable and absolutely will always be offensive. These are the same people that turn around and when they need their language to be flexible and they need a little bit of linguistic trickery to win an argument or to advance their particular views on the culture war bullshit, they then go, come on, man, stop being such a boomer. Language evolves over time. And it's like, yeah, it was evolving back then as well for that word. And they go, yeah, well, sorry, not those words, because we need those words to remain the same. And it's just trash. It's just garbage. It's like I say, it's just a rake on the ground for you to step on whenever a fucking, whenever a Karen is around or a woke scold is around to chastise you over it. Anyway, so here we go. What did he say back in 2013, the lead artist for the game? Yang embarked on an extensive diatribe about how games made for women and men are completely different due to their biological differences. Well, this is a thorny topic 10 fucking years ago. In the post, he pointed out that when men were holding a heavy machine gun and shooting at governments in your dreams, what the ladies are dreaming about are bags that would make their friends jealous. That's a little bit reductive, isn't it? I am going to say there's probably a little bit more to it than that. However, I will also point to the fact that in a very real way, most games developers now do understand that actually, yes, men and women do approach gaming differently. Not all the time and not in some entrenched, segregated gender role kind of way, but just rather that when you go to the mean, typically they engage with games in different ways, and there are trends that can be recognized, and that a lot of games developers now, by having more women involved in the games development space, what they're now doing is they are recognizing these trends and they are putting these things baked into the games to begin with. So that strikes me as a largely good thing, but also on the one hand, the people saying we need more women in the room so more women can be represented because men and women are different, then somebody over here goes, yeah, men and women are different. They like bags and shit. And they go, no, we're not different. We're all the same. And it's like, hang on. Right, okay. Everyone's being silly. There certainly are differences and differences in thought process. And again, this is just in generalities. I know many women that think almost in an identical fashion to me. And I wouldn't say I have any, particular fucking great, expansive, nuanced way of thinking about the world. And I know, many guys that don't. And I would say probably, think differently. So, I mean, what does that mean? I don't know. Everyone's different. But yes, you are going to notice some trends if you pay attention to these things. What else does he say? He says he then concluded the post by suggesting he would need to put on silk stockings and suspenders to work. Okay, well, he's just got coding socks there. I mean, that seems appropriate. Brew chrysanthemum tea and put a humidifier on his table to make soft and effeminate things. Oh, it's all good. Sounds like he's just on a femboy arc. That's fine. He should join the Rich Chord. He'd fit right in. So, not great, but remember, this is like Exhibit C. in a fucking supposed argument about why this is the most sexist, awful studio of all time. And I'm sorry, I might not think he's phrased it delicately. I might not think as well he's accurate in his assessment of what those differences might be. But 10 years ago, people did say we did used to talk like this. So, for good or ill, I'm kind of all right with it. Anyway, most recently, a technical artist from Game Science, Dewey, suggested in a post on Zihu, which is a Chinese equivalent of social question and answer website Quora, that a female character from Black Myth Wukong, known as the Snake Spirit, can be masturbated to by looking at her more. Although I'm not used to the snake neck, I can still nurture that fetish, he adds. The comment, which was posted in the wake of the release of Black Myth Wukong's Gamescom's trailer, has since been deleted. And you can see here, the snake spirit is different from what I imagined, but if I cover the bottom half with my hand, it's still possible to jerk off. Now, this is just a joke. This is just a joke, right? The type of joke that we make all the time. And so, by the way, over here, right, what do we do? What do we consider funny? It's the mermaid question. Basically the equivalent of the mermaid question. What's the mermaid question, Richard, for those that don't know? Well, the mermaid question is, would you rather have a fish, like a typical mermaid, a fish with the bottom half and a beautiful lady on the top half, but presumably you can't consummate because it's a fish from the bottom half, or would you have a woman on the bottom half and a fish on the top half? Right? Now, obviously, there's objectively only one answer to that, unless you're a sicko. But that's the type of silly discussion that we engage in over here, isn't it? And so what's so hard about that? That's a challenging wank, that's a Sean Locke line, rest in peace, It's not sexist to say I would jerk off to that imaginary image. I mean, again, don't want to belabor the point, but the type of... I do have to say, I can't really understand where a lot of the shit libs are at with this, because on the one hand, the male gaze is terrible. Look, Trace has got a voluptuous ass, and she's a lesbian, so that voluptuous ass isn't for you. And then Activision Blizzard go, listen, what do we have to do to get out of this one? Right, Soldier 76 is gay, and Tracer has no ass. She's just got an ironing board on the back now. Are we okay? Are we good now? Are we good? Can we still just hoover money out your pocket now? Is that okay? And it's then they produce an article of, Kotaku do this all the time. They publish an article, same author. The male gaze in Nier Automata is actually disgusting and repellent and shows we've still got a long way to go in the industry. Okay, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, all right, fair enough. Good lecture. I will stop having any form of sexual desire for imaginary characters. You've got me. And then they immediately publish, here are the top 10 people we would fucking Hades too. You go, right, guys, I'm struggling to understand where right, can I think about fucking the imaginary people or not? Where are we at? Am I allowed? Right, just say, I'll follow the rules if you follow the rules. But that's it. That's kind of where we're at. So this isn't a problem to me either, and I think to call it sexist is silly. Finally, we're at the end of all of the evidence then. Finally, there's the Game Science logo. Several Chinese netizens have pointed out that it resembles a sperm. It does indeed resemble a sperm. I will say that, right? Game Science has yet to confirm or deny this finding. You can see how it's there, the little thing like that. It does look like a sperm, right? I can zoom in a little bit for you guys, right? Now, it's a lightning-tailed sperm. It's the fastest sperm, perhaps. That's what they're trying to convey. Because ultimately, it's only the fastest sperm that gets to, get with the egg and make a life. And so, therefore, being the fastest sperm is the best. Half of me was the fastest sperm. Incredibly. This was the best that could shoot out of my father's penis. However, it's true for all of us, right? So I don't see the problem. I don't think sperm is sexist. Is that crazy? I don't know. Is sperm sexist? is acknowledging the incredible, awesome power of sperm sexist. I don't think it is. So this is very strange to me that they've gone with that. Anyway, they then, so all of that is silly, what they've done. They then do go on to talk more about things that are interesting. They talk about, for example, the one-child policy I was talking about at the start, which is why a lot of that it is quite flippant to talk. But when the government mandates how many children you can have, and the knock-on effect of that is that it becomes more desirable to produce a male offspring because they have more societal opportunities to make money. And you have this horrible, in rural China, this slew of abandoned girls because they go ahead, have the baby, realize we only can have one kid, we've given birth to a girl, that's going to harm our potential to make money, so they abandon. This is a very real phenomenon you can go and read about. Yeah, funnily enough, that will give you, kind of a bit of a flippant and blasé attitude about producing offspring, So I'm not going to condemn a Chinese person for talking about it in the way he did earlier, given the fact that we're talking decades of government input into how you think culturally. It doesn't seem fair. So it talks about that. It talks about how in China the Me Too movement got censored quite famously. On social, I don't know if you remember this, but on social media, that the hashtag Me Too, all of that was being suppressed in China because obviously there were some very powerful Chinese businessmen that probably have that kind of thing in their closet, and we can't have Chinese society being attacked in that way by the wily West. So yeah, there was censorship going on there, as you would expect. But all of this stuff isn't anything to do with game science, and you can see they're talking here about other companies where people have come forward and they're talking about their experiences of sexism in these companies, and you can see here that they try and tie it all together for game science, and then they do the science is complicity argument right at the end. And I'll read you the end paragraphs here. Black Myth Wukong's controversy sits at an inflection point. They love that term lately, the shit libs. Joe Biden was saying it a lot. It was right up there with the idea. I don't really think it is an inflection point, but whatever. The Wukong controversy sits at an inflection point, not just for Chinese feminism, but also for the Chinese games industry. While a handful of breakout hits such as Genshin Impact, yes, I know you're all playing that in the chat, you dirty weebs, have gained global attention in recent years, China has still struggled to produce many games with international appeal. Black Myth Wukong's reception at Gamescom opening night live and other events indicates it may be the difference maker. Jeff Keighley did not return a request for comment, but while that's good news for the industry, it's having a knock-on effect of putting game science on a global stage, one that may treat its past remarks with less generosity. They intend to release this game internationally. The company should not expect to just coast on nice-looking gameplay, Zong said. Granted, the one thing they have going is Western games are sexist as well. I think they would probably just expect to coast on the status quo and people ignoring misogyny, but that's the risk that that the company chooses to take. In light of all of this, game science may have found itself backed into a corner. If its remarks circulate more widely to a Western audience, it risks Black Myth Wukong being condemned, but in China, its audience is full of fervent defenders of its past actions. Should the studio apologize and risk alienating the supporters it gained from the stance it's perceived to have taken over the years? Will it? So in other words, the way the article ends is saying that actually the game will not do well in the West if people think it's sexist, but they can't apologize for the sexism. And I've just shown you all of the incredible, outrageous, shocking examples of why we need to condemn this game, going back as far as 2007, apparently. They're saying they can't apologize for that. because then all of the Chinese people would go, how dare you bow down to the West? How dare you? Which actually does also seem to be a kind of bit of a bigotry of low expectation form of racism that shit libs love to engage in, but I'm not going to get into that. So, obviously, with this in mind, it was kind of imperative that this game didn't do particularly well. I think it's interesting that the games journalists completely underestimate just how few people have the appetite for this online. And I'm not talking about the gamers TM, and I'm not doing the whole they came for all of that's cringe. All of that's the flip side to the culture war. And as in true fashion, Richard will be attacking both sides from his position of enlightened radical centrism. Right, but I think we saw that with the Hogwarts game, where people were going, oh, you shouldn't stream this. You shouldn't stream this or promote this because J.K. Rowling is a transphobe. And most people went, sorry, I don't really care about that aspect of this particular... I just want to play a game that resonates with me because the Harry Potter books were a big part of my childhood. Sorry. Like, if you want me to sign a piece of paper that makes things better for trans people, yeah, but telling me not to play a video game I want to play because somebody not even involved with the creative process of that video game, but is just responsible for the source intellectual property, it may or may not be transphobic. Sorry, I'm playing the game. Sorry. And that's exactly what people did. People did play the game. And I'm pretty sure the journos, they all, and their ilk, they all thought it was going to be a slam dunk. They really thought that if they attacked enough people, that it would move the dial and people would stop playing the game. No, it largely blew up in their face, frankly. I won't give a whole history of that sordid little thing, but I mean, even benign content creators that have never held a controversial stance were being attacked. Tearful farewells from VTubers. VTubers were bullied off the internet for playing Hogwarts. And, I have to live in a world where on my fucking timeline of games news, there is a cartoon girl, probably a dude with a voice modulator that's just making money because they used to get 10 views when they streamed video games. But now that they're a cartoon chick with a fucking shark hat or something as a gimmick, now they've got millions of views and millions in the bank. VTubers like crying, saying I'm quitting VTubing because I played the Hogwarts game and now someone's trying to dox me and they're telling me to kill myself. It's like, I just don't know, guys. Maybe it's all got a bit silly at that point when you're bullying cartoons off the internet. So I think the journos really underestimate this because ultimately, I know this is going to shock everyone, the average person isn't mired in culture war bullshit. We don't care. We simply don't care. I'm terminally online, so I do care, right? And I make content around it because it's basically a way that I don't have to take charge of my life. So that's fine. I can just live in this little fucking bubble and just make money by talking about this shit. But most people are sick and tired of the fucking culture war shit. Not even sick and tired of it. Some people just never got involved with it in the first place. They just don't care. It's like it is meant to be. Look, there are people that just don't care about what it is they consume. They've accepted the world is fucked, and they go through life and they go, look, I need a new iPhone. And somebody goes, yeah, but don't you realize how that iPhone was manufactured and how they got all the minerals for that? And it came from these unsustainable, blood minerals, and then went to a factory in China where people are throwing themselves out of the windows and trying to commit suicide, but there's nets to catch them, and they get caught and they just get brought back, and it's essentially like indentured servitude. And I don't care. I need a new iPhone, guys. Sorry. I'm sorry the world's fucked up, but I need a new iPhone, and I don't care. And I would go so far as to say that's the average person. I think I'll have a barbecue this weekend. The weather's nice. Aren't you aware that factory farming is actually look what's happening to the animals. Here's a video. Look what they're doing. Look how the animal is still alive while they're bleeding it, and it's screaming. It sounds like a person. Yeah, but you know what? Them fucking sausages are gonna taste real fucking good. So I'm sorry. I don't care. And it's like, it's fucked up, right? Because we should probably all care, but the average person doesn't care. And by the way, I have listed some pretty big, weighty topics that actually people can be made to care about these things. You know, I do it all the time. Occasionally, I've got vegan and vegetarian friends, and I sit there and I go, this is kind of fucked up though. Do I really need to eat this fucking delicious porterhouse right now? Do I? And the answer is, in that moment, no. But I do it anyway because it is fucking great. But maybe one day I could take a fucking turn into veganism. Like, basically, after the second heart attack, right? After the second heart attack, I'll probably, because the first was drug-induced, so the second, if it's food-induced, I will absolutely 100% probably consider seriously vegetarianism at that point. But the average person, the point being, the average person, that you can't make them care about the Harry Potter culture war. You cannot. You cannot sit them down and go, J.K. Rowling said all of this stuff I disagree with. Yeah, but I don't even have a Twitter account. I don't care what she tweeted. Yeah, but you must recognise it's bad. No, I just really like the books. Sorry, I really like the films. I think I like the video game. I'm going to buy the video game. No, but you must care. No, I'm sorry. You know, that's that. You can't make people care about this shit. And I would argue the people that do, their lives are kind of out of shape. And I'm talking, again, both sides, right? You know I hate the chudosphere. You know I fucking hate, like, for example, this is a controversial one. I hate the way the critical drinker has normalized the worst aspect of film criticism. I do a film podcast, don't I, where we critique movies. The last episode got a little bit crazy. You'll see. But anyway, I think if you only critique movies through the lens of the culture war, that's ass. I don't think that's good criticism at all. I think if I know what you're going to say about a film based on where it stands in the culture war, the lead actress has blue hair. The lead actress said some woke things on Twitter. I know you're going to give it a bad review. I know you're not going to be objective. I know you're going to go, the message, and everyone's going to go, yeah, I'm sick of being lectured, which I understand. But if that's all your criticism is, that sucks. Sorry, it does. I like to think criticism can be more nuanced and fleshed out than that. If you're giving something like the new Bad Boys movie a good review because you go, well, it's bad and the acting's bad and the plot's bad and the comedy doesn't land, but that's fine because it's just good fun and it's not pandering to the woke mob and it's not putting out the message. It's like, no, but it's an objectively bad film. You're not even critiquing the film at this point. You're critiquing the zeitgeist within which the film is released. So, I'm just saying, that is what the journos were hoping. I'll even just show you, because, you know, it's gonna be one of those where it's like, why is Blood yapping? Why is Blood yapping? Why doesn't he get to the point? Why is he talking about the critical drinker? Right. This was in June this year, and you can see it made it onto the Mary Sue. So we've gone a year in terms of journo coverage, and there are other articles. I'm not going to bore you with it because I'm going to link a bunch in a moment, where this game was somehow controversial, and you can see they just rehashed the IGN article, and they even pull out a quote from the IGN China report, again rehashing the article, saying these male developers have never paid the price for their misogynistic remarks. In their eyes, women don't deserve respect. Even just listening to them is considered pandering, a marketing tactic, and catering to Western political correctness. I can't describe how despairing this feels. So even in June, we're still pushing this idea. It was about to be released, obviously, that it is a controversial game made by a studio of sexists based on the evidence that I showed you. Now, I might have missed some stuff out. So apologies if I have. Then I get accused of being part of the chudosphere. But that was that. So let's fast forward to the release of the game. And a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. A blog appeared on the internet on Medium by someone called Don Parsons. Not somebody whose work I was familiar with or whose game I was familiar with. I apologize. But Don Parsons published this. Black Myth Wukong streaming agreement says no politics, no China, and no feminist propaganda. Well, itty. If it isn't my old friend, feminist propaganda. How I've missed it. How I've missed thee. Right out the gate, I saw that and I said, while that's probably a salacious framing, I reckon that's true. Because I've seen streaming agreements. They are crazy a lot of the time because they are not the same as embargoes and NDAs and what a journalist would sign. Remember, streamers, except me, streamers, it's a quid pro quo. You give me the access, I get the views, I get the subs, I get the money. So, streamers enter into a business relationship with the games developer for access. And they're not ethically bound in the way journalists are, although, again, we can go back and forth about that. So, I have seen streaming agreements which are like crazy. Like, they say you can't criticize the game at all. That's come up a number of times. I've seen ones that say, if a bug happens in a game, because it's still quite glitchy, you have to be compelled to quickly change the stream and start saying, something crashed. It must be like a problem with my setup. Like, you can't acknowledge that the game is broken in some way. I've seen stuff that, you can't talk about any form of politics whatsoever while you're streaming the game. There's all sorts of crazy shit out there, and it's all private. And it's the dictate of the games developer. They get to say whatever the fuck they want, and streamers will do it. So, this comes out. Let's have a read. Let's go straight to the relevant part of the document. By using the game key and creating content, you acknowledge that you have been informed of the following content and your statements are not related to the marketing team. Do's and don'ts. Do's? Enjoy the game. Okay. That's all I have to do. No, wicked. Thank you. Just play the game. Enjoy the game. Seems reasonable. What about these don'ts? Don't. Do not insult other influencers or players. Okay, fair enough, I suppose. Do not use any offensive language or humour. No, that's a bit much of a demand. But I suppose, okay, I'll keep it family, keep it PG, not a problem. Do not include politics, violence, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. Okay, those things aren't all the same, are they? Like, I'm trying to put it delicately. Maybe avoiding politics broadly is fine for advertised content. I get that. Some advertisers are very squeamish about having politics discussed adjacent to their branding. Okay. That's fair. Violence? Yeah. Violence is bad. The game is itself inherently violent, I suppose, but we'll ignore that. You mean real life violence. I'm not going to be facetious. Fine. Nudity. Well, I was going to do my body painting Black Myth Wukong stream where I paint eyes on my beanbag. But I guess now we're gonna have to not do that. That's reasonable. You are paying me. Feminist propaganda. It's kind of telling that it's feminist propaganda because there are many flavors of propaganda. This isn't a blanket ban on propaganda, even though you would have thought that would just be covered by politics anyway. No. We want to reiterate feminist propaganda. Now, what is feminist propaganda? Can anyone answer me that? I wouldn't even know what that would be. I'm being serious. If you said, Richard, whatever you do when you're on your stream, don't do any feminist propaganda, I would be like, can you give me an example? I would really need to know, like, what is that? Ooh, abortions. I just don't. What are we? What is that? What is in 2024, current year, what is feminist propaganda? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm not doing a Philip Bump. I don't know. Anyway, fetishization. So why is that there? You've done nudity, but what do you mean by fetishization? What does that mean? I want to know what that means. I mean, fair enough, actually. If it is an anti-furry policy, that's pretty based. I'll go on record. I'll die on that hill. And I suppose, given that a lot of the characters in this game are anthropomorphized animals, you probably have to fucking hose the average fucking furry down. Like literally. So that's just fucking weird. Right? That's just weird. Because politics, violence, nudity, yeah. The other two, where's that come from, homie? Like, where are you getting that from? Okay, let's go on. Do not use trigger words. Okay, well, listen. Even though the science is now settled that actually these microaggressions and trigger theory, by not exposing people to it, you do more harm than you do if you expose them with fair warning. Fine. I suppose trigger words are a thing now in society, don't we? We put warning on everything. We put warnings on all types of content. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe that's political correctness gone bloody mad. Maybe that's just a considerate way to help anxious people negotiate reality. That's fine. What are the trigger words? Chinese game developer, quarantine, isolation, fantastic song by Joy Division, or COVID-19. Well then, most of us have moved on, haven't we, from the old COVID-19. I think a lot of us can sort of see it as a profoundly sad period in human history where, because a lot of things were happening geopolitically around the world, and because of the ubiquitous, intrusive nature of social media, and I don't want to paraphrase Joe Rogan's awful Burn the Boats special, but we lost a lot of people in the pandemic, and I don't mean to death. I mean, you probably have friends and relatives who their box just fucking blew out. Boom. They just brain meltosis, gone forever. And it could be that they believed the lizard people were creating a virus to thin out the population. That type, the QAnon type. Or it could be the people that are still wearing they're triple masking in fucking outdoors. Triple masking outdoors after their 7th booster and 7th infection in 2024. Both of these people are insane. And it's sad. And I'll just say my stance on COVID is pretty much where it was at the time. The masks stuff was bullshit. Unless you were N95'd up to the hilt, with an actual fitted N95 mask, it was largely performative, and the numbers bear that out now, and we all kind of know it, but we just move on. The vaccines kind of were shit, weren't they? I mean, I had mine. I got sicker off the vaccine probably than I did when I got the fucking Delta wave, and I've had COVID 4 times, despite getting double spiked. So, fuck knows. They weren't very good, were they? And also, I kind of think compelling people to have any form of injection, not ideal. And, oh yeah, and the other thing, not being allowed to visit dying relatives in hospital in case you give them something that's going to kill them, that's fucking retarded. That is the only word for it. And the fact that that was government policy in a lot of countries is beyond a fucking joke. And no, you shouldn't be okay with that now. You shouldn't be okay with the people that told you that, now that they just shrug their shoulders and go, yeah, sorry, we probably were a bit overzealous there. But that's it. I don't. Other than that, I don't think I have any controversial opinions. I don't think those opinions are controversial. I think they're decidedly mainstream now in 2024. However, I am not from China, and China that totally gave the world COVID because it totally came from that lab. Not doing a bit. It just 100% did. And anyone who says otherwise is deeply unserious. They have a very different perspective on COVID, don't they? Because what happened was it got out of that lab, everyone got it. Everyone got sick. Then the government said, right, well, we can't have this. And because it's very easy to stop an outbreak in a totalitarian country because you just suspend everyone's freedoms. You just take their freedoms away. And so I saw the videos. You saw the videos. We all saw the videos. We got the best videos, okay? We saw people being welded into their houses in videos that were labelled propaganda by the Chinese state but couldn't be explained. We saw the crying, wailing, flailing people being forced away from their families by people in hazmat suits. We saw that. By the way, to the people in the chat that are skeptical about the welded in the houses thing, I assure you, I wish I was, like, exaggerating, but no. Right, well, had you done any shopping? No, the taps are off. Sorry, we have a zero COVID policy. The madness of zero COVID policy in general for any government to adopt that, which is what China did, is crazy. And I do want to say, useful idiots in the Western media parroted the Chinese state's talking point and going, why? Because it made the Orange Man look bad and it made Boris Johnson look bad in Britain. They were going, why can't we be more like China? They have zero cases. Guys, I don't know how to break this to you. The Chinese state might be lying about that, but also, shall we just do a little thought exercise about how it's going to go down if you try and do that in a country that ostensibly still has civil liberties in place? So, COVID is a big deal in China. They don't, not least of all because totally it was that lab in Wuhan that gave it to the world because of lax safety protocols, which were known about by the American government years ago, and yet they still did gain and function research there. Don't just ignore that scandal, that's fine. But in China, you don't talk about the virus no more. The virus came from a wet market because somebody licked a pangolin's asshole or something, and whoops, that was COVID. But don't worry, the government made it go away. So just don't, and it doesn't even exist now in China. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. That was the one that lots of people seized upon and said, it's bogus. It's anti-Chinese. That's what that is. That's racism. And I'm thinking, don't think you really know what was going on in China during the pandemic, actually. If you think the term COVID-19 being a censored term in China is some sort of like far-fetched fantasy. Oh, no. And then do not discuss content related to China's game industry policies, opinions, news, etc. Well, never do that. Because China's all over the place. They did have, as I've covered in my videos, they did have quite a conservative pushback in relatively recent times. You know, for example, it was Chinese policy from the Ministry of Culture that effeminate men could no longer read the news. Again, you can look this up. I wish I was lying. That would rule out 90% of the rich chord, but that's fine. They're all coders anyway. But yeah, effeminate men not being allowed to read the news. They also had this thing where they didn't want, I believe it was under 18s, or it might have been 16 or under. But anyway, you couldn't play video games through the week. And they were tying this together with Tencent facial recognition technology. So if you wanted to sit down and play a game of Dota or League of Legends, God help you, you would have to sit down, you would go log on to the game client to get access to the game. And you would have to look into the camera and it would go, you know, teenager, identify. Well, some Twitch people might want to repurpose this technology. I'm sailing close to the wind with that one. Fuck it. Teenager, identify right? You can only play on Saturdays and Sundays. And so, they don't get to play. They try to log on, they can't. So you you needed not even parental permission. You needed to be 18 or more to be able to just game at your leisure. And they were doing this to push this kind of like, we want China to be more wholesome, more disciplined, more regimented in how we approach education and all of this stuff. So that there, to me, as presented, it seems believable. Like, does anyone in the chat think that is so far-fetched that would absolutely instantly set off red flags? Remember, I have a great red flag detector for this. I'm good with fake news. I looked at that, I was like, that's certainly within the realms of possibility. So, let me tell you who didn't think it was within the realms of possibility. Reddit. Reddit blew up this story first because it's Reddit, okay? They were saying, oh, it's a Google Doc, you can't trust that. Again, spoiler, how a lot of agreements and contracts kind of distributed. It's just a method. It doesn't mean anything. Not sure about the validity of this shit, especially coming from a blog poster with only 12 followers. All the supposed confirmations by content creators still trace back to the same scantily written one-page Google document. This all seems fabricated with a big spoonful of Reddit-only reading headlines, right? Some dude with absolutely no subs managed to get this much visibility with a shitty homemade Google Doc, and people are falling for it. Anti-China talking points go brrr. There's a weird thing that happens on Reddit. Reddit well, it's not weird. I'll tell you exactly what it is. For some reason, there's this weird intersection of when you're an American liberal, at some point, there's a type of American liberal that just like tips over the edge, and suddenly it's all communist iconography. And you go, listen, Stalin was a cool dude, and Mao, great book, great little book, and all of this stuff. And it's like, it's just strange to kind of watch it happening. And they think if you criticize the Chinese state, it's racism. And I'm not saying that that's anything to do with the fact that China has invested a ton of money into Reddit, which is a failing platform because it's run by chuckleheads who can't fucking monetize one of the most viewed websites on the internet because their brains are broken. But yeah, and that is pretty much a lot of the discourse on Reddit, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how, say, somebody who's like an American liberal and believes in civil liberties and that kind of thing, I don't understand where along your journey you suddenly go, but yeah, China's fucking wicked. I love the Chinese government. And you go, but no, there's no, they can't, it doesn't, they're not compatible. Anyway, China talking points go brrr. This whole thread has been really ridiculous. Like, I'm not pro-Chinese government, but imagine if every time there was a single negative PR story about Rockstar, everyone started to bring up prison slave labor and abortion being recriminalized, and about a dozen other examples I could just pull off the top of my head. Y'all got to sit back and realizing that equating every Chinese company with its government is just xenophobia. This person called Scrobbler. Yeah, this person, obviously not aware of the concept of the golden share, or probably didn't follow the news about how the Chinese government just jacked all of Tencent's fucking loot to give out like $7 billion to the country for philanthropic deeds, which, by the way, tanked Tencent's share price, and Tencent had to come out and go, we are so happy and proud to support our government and our glorious Chinese People's Republic. Like, fuck's sake. Like, Scrobbler probably doesn't know about that. So I'm going to give them, to use gender-neutral pronouns, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. See if there's any other ridiculous. How is anyone taking this seriously when the document looks like a 2-minute Google Docs job and the email that created the file, gamescience@gmail.com, is not an internal email? These types of things are always in password-protected Dropboxes. By the way, also not true, but fine. You go off, WD23. And this is a Medium article from someone with no credentials. Am I going insane? Is no one questioning how Op even found this obscure Medium account? I trust this less than I trust YouTube comments. This thread needs to be tagged as unsubstantiated or outright as misinformation until there is some evidence provided that backs up its claims in the face of reports to the contrary. How is this still up? The smear campaign on this game is ridiculous. I refuse to believe this is real. Since people are too lazy to do their own research, this is the Google Doc in question. What kind of streaming agreement has a single page of guidelines for content creators? This Medium article makes it look as if this is some big document, but they specifically focused on that do's and don'ts section, except that's the entire document. And on and on and on and on it goes, okay? Then the post got locked later, after the fact, because this happened. Jordan Midler of VGC says the Black Myth Wukong no China streamer agreement is not real. And you can see PSA before people go mental about this. The review doc, at least in the UK, included is absolutely nothing like this. It's pretty standard, if a bit strict list of in-game content we can't mention. No journalist would agree to an embargo with an anti-feminism clause. Jesus fucking Christ. Well, here's the problem, Jordan, ex-BBC. Terrifying, of course. It is a streamer's agreement. It is a streamer agreement. It is not a journalist agreement. It is for the streamers and the content creators. And yes, streamers and content creators, because it's not policed in the same way, they agree to shit like this all of the fucking time. And so this got interpreted not as games journalists can't fucking read, which is the accurate way to interpret it. It got interpreted as that is fake, the blog is fake, and Reddit bad, and everyone hates China. Obviously, a lot of people have retconned it, and comments have been upvoted. You can see here, look at this. It was so obviously fake news that this subreddit allowed because it supported their agenda against the developer. Really? A Google Doc? And people here really thought mainstream gaming journalists would accept these terms? Content creators are not journalists. The edit is great because you can see where this is going, obviously. Looks like the terms are real. Fucking owned, of course. Nothing to do with journalists. Reddit falling hook, line and sinker for made-up stuff about China. Wellity. Beef shampoo there. The final paragraph of the Medium post that this came from is so blatantly ridiculous, I'm surprised anyone took it seriously. It sucks to see how quickly misinformation can spread. If you don't want to buy or support Black Myth for what we've heard about game science in the past, that's okay. But you don't need to make shit up to push this weird, xenophobic agenda. You and your xenophobia, said Sage Water Dragon. I assumed the Google email address for a Chinese-based company would have been a bit of a giveaway, but go figure. It's so blatant how racist people are on this site anytime anything China is brought up, not even trying to mask their prejudice. By the way, unfortunately for Virtual World 2524, by using the word mask, you have now lost 1,000 social credit score. Get fucked. The fake news already spread all through Twitter already. The damage is done, and people really want the game to fail because they are racists. This includes the mods in this subreddit for keeping up the fake news so long. Sound a bit like Trump there, mate. What happened to the mod team here anyway? 5 years ago, they'd removed so much stuff. Now they just let all kinds of baseless blog posts through without even flinching. Not to mention, they seem to have completely given up on curtailing the most embarrassing console war stuff across countless threads. All right, I'm just going to talk about my shit now. All right, okay, cool. All right, Xbox Morrowind. It's wild how much this place regresses to like 2000s era game FAQs, message board discourse when there's even a mention of Sony or Microsoft. Sad. I need to find a good RSS feed or something. I see Red Scare propagandists are on full throttle because Chinese video gaming is on the rise. The amount of fucking racists on the previous thread doesn't surprise me one bit. This sub and website in general has had a pretty obvious agenda for a while now. Reddit is only good for its small communities. Anything this size, the well is poisoned. We'll be shocked if this thread stays up without a ton of comments being deleted, at least. And on it goes, right? Now here's the problem, as you can probably tell by some of the edits and the top voted comments. It was real. And it was real, and it was confirmed by a real journalist called Paul Tassi, who writes at a real publication called Forbes. Paul Tassi from Forbes says he verifies that the Black Myth Wukong streaming guidelines are real. Now, Reddit, obviously, what I hate about Redditors is they're real people. I mean, first and foremost, I fucking hate them, the people, right? They're real people. But what they do is they do this thing where Reddit is like a Skinner box. It's a consensus machine. That's all it does. It generates consensus. It rewards consensus. Studies have been done. The first 3 comments in a thread will dictate the tone and the tenor of the thread. Updates to the left, the concept of karma, even the language around Reddit is telling you agreement is good, disagreement is bad. For instance, you only need net 5 people to disagree with you, which is fuck all, by the way, in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you walked into a room and you said, I think Declan Rice is a £100 million footballer, right? That's the kind of thing people can go 50-50 on, particularly if you're in a room full of fucking deluded Arsenal fans. But that could easily generate net 5 negative opinions, right? Listen, I was hating Declan Rice before it was fucking cool, the minute they signed him. And all your motherfuckers were all trying to tell me, oh, he's really good. Kai Havertz is the truth. Anyway, the point is, net 5 disagreements isn't really all that much. And yet, that's all it takes to make your opinion disappear. And, get this, 100, well, technically 99 I think it is, but net 100 people disagreeing with you, which is how karma works. One person likes something you said. Have an update, my lady. Happy cake day. Right? That's 1. That's +1. Somebody going, well, it's relevant to the discussion, but it hurts my feelings. Down doot, my lady. Right? That is -1. Right? If you express opinions that generate -100 down doots, thanks for the down doot, kind stranger, right? You don't even appear in subreddits anymore. Anywhere. You're just shadow banned by default. Your opinions, your posts have to be approved manually by mods who can't be asked because they're only sitting in the fucking subreddit for some weird fucked up status head trip because they're fucking losers and incels. So if I encounter thousands of people every day and a negative 100 disagree with me and that's enough to vanish my opinions from the biggest forum on the internet, that's pretty shit. That's actually really, really shit. It's no wonder it's a fucking insufferable echo chamber. And by the way, it's not even an echo chamber in and of itself. You might go, oh, Richard, communities arrive at a consensus. Of course they do. Counter-Strike fans have arrived at the consensus. There's a cheater in every game. Just live with it, Richard. Reality doesn't matter. We've arrived at the consensus. All right. But here's the problem. When you have the same people moderating the same forums and the same type of opinion as a broad spectrum across all forums, sub-forums on Reddit is rewarded in the same way, the whole site is an echo chamber. And so it's garbage. And what I hate about Redditors is they do this, they engage in this, and then when they get found out to have had a bad opinion or push misinformation, and by the way, this is the tip of the iceberg for the website that made a fucking guy kill himself after they falsely accused him of being the Boston Marathon bomber, right? Look that up if you're not familiar with that story. What I hate about Redditors is there's never a mea culpa. The same dickhead that spread the misinformation doesn't turn up in the thread where they're fucking wrong and go, holy shit, I'm so embarrassed and ashamed to have participated in spreading misinformation. No, here's what they do. They turn around, Redditors, and uniformly they go, it's almost like we're all different people or something. If enough of you disagreed with the bullshit, it wouldn't appear on the front page. But you're never there to downvote it, apparently. You're only there to upvote the bad stuff. Isn't that weird? So no, I am tarring you all with the same brush because you are pulling the levers on a consensus machine. I don't care if you look like a cunt or you missed the meeting that fucking weekend when you're proven wrong. You don't get to turn around and go, oh, we're all just different people with different opinions. Why aren't you pushing back against the shit opinions then? Redditors. So, Paul Tassi said, I'm actually surprised here. I have confirmed with the US creator I trust that the Black Myth Wukong guideline email is real. An extended conversation with an email tracing back to the company resulted in an actual code for the game. It's not just some Google doc. Huh. Wellity. Kind of seems that there would have to be some sort of expansive mea culpa, a moment, and it wasn't just Paul Tassi, by the way. There was a follow-up as well. More confirmations over here as well. They followed up with the French YouTuber, confirmed the email was from Hero Games, and verified another content creator got the same email with a working key. So let's have a look. Surely this is just an embarrassing blow to morons that have been co-opted in a culture war. No. Well, it just keeps getting stranger. I want off this ride. No, let's go faster. I brought popcorn. Redditors, I'm begging you to stop doing this. I know this is what passes for, like, cool, witty banter in your fucking Discord world. But this isn't how people talk. It's just cringe. Somebody points out that, yeah, people should feel ashamed. And then it goes here. In all honesty, as someone in the industry, and I always love this, I love it when this Redditor turns up to the thread. Happens all the time. Happens on the Counter-Strike subreddit all the fucking time, by the way. Whenever anyone's going, why Valve? Why they abandoned the game? They've abandoned the game. They're working on Deadlock. They hate Counter-Strike. It's always going to be bad. Someone always rocks up and goes, as a developer, I'm something of a developer myself. All right, fucking Norman Osborn. Glad you're here. You made... At best, if you're not just fucking lying, you made some shitty Flash game back in... You're not Valve. You've got no insight into Valve. One of the more successful companies of all fucking time. Well, as a games developer myself, let me tell you. So it is. As someone who's in the industry, this is fucking weird. First off, PR companies are the ones who handle sending out game codes. The devs can, but they're usually super indie devs that just can't afford it. And there are the big-time publishers who have their own PR teams. Game science doesn't come off as either. Second, game review guidelines are usually sent to everyone who gets a code, whether it's for video or written. There is stuff that they say not to talk about, but it's usually spoilers for big twists that happen later in the game. Rarely are there totally different guidelines like this. And because of that, this created utter confusion about the guidelines because these streamer guidelines came out right after the reviews came out. So when people in the industry hear about how there were these guidelines they had to follow in order to get a code, they wonder, what the fuck is everyone talking about since they didn't get the same guideline? None of this is standard practices for games reviews, and it doesn't make a lick of sense. Guy just totally pulling it out of his arse, not in the fucking industry at all, never worked as a fucking journalist, certainly never worked as a games developer, certainly never worked in PR, would bet all of those things. And then Pope Francis, he's back from the dead, says, until you realise they're unprofessional ideologues, then it makes a lot of sense. You see, the IGN article still looms large. Look at this. Dr. Nick. Hi, everybody. It's real. No, it's not. Yes, it actually is. Man, the discourse regarding this has been interesting, to say the least. Could you have made it interesting in your description in any way, shape, or form? Because that just sounds like a very standard, basic, this is real. No, it isn't. Oh, it was. All right. Fine. Though, considering what I can see going through the linked thread, it looks like that it was in fact real, but only sent out to certain groups. See, Reddit always trying to give themselves the out. Redditors instinctively do it. It's reflexive. Travis Northup of IGN is on a podcast live right now talking about how again, journalists, not content creators, talking about how the embargo for this game is extremely convoluted and contains so much attempts to control the narrative that IGN, brave, real journalists IGN, who don't just give everything good ratings for access, believable reviews, IGN there, had to push back against their requests. They apparently wanted to control it to the point of telling IGN how long the review was allowed to be. He said the whole process with this game has been amateurish. So, not a lot of shame. Not a lot of shame. There should be a strong uptake for shame. But it turned out that, yes, those guidelines were real and everybody knee-jerked reflexively because they wanted to defend their side of the culture war. What do you mean, Richard? Surely it was an innocent understanding. No, it wasn't an innocent understanding. You see, the people that want game science bad to be true, they go, the ones that are like, he said this in 2000, he talked about stillbirth in 2007, he's a misogynist. Those people were like, hey, they're saying don't talk about feminist propaganda, they hate women. Okay, right? They needed it to be true, and so they jumped at it, and it turns out it was true. But the people in the Chuddersphere, you're attacking this game. And also, bizarrely, in a rare alliance, the Chuddersphere and the stop being racist against the Chinese state, here's a hammer and sickle, I'm a tanky fucking loser, a weird alliance broke out, didn't it? And they needed it to be false. And so they said, how can you fall for this? It's just a Google Doc. Nothing accurate has ever been published on a Google Doc. What are you talking about? Only a moron would believe this. And then it was proven right by a journalist that did fact-checking. And a journalist in the form of Paul Tassi, capable of reading. Now, that might be the end of the story, and you go, Richard, that was a really long way to get to a pretty boring conclusion. But no, there's more. You see, I have to say that I think there is a lot of propaganda about this game. That there is this bizarre borderline astroturfing going on to make the game seem positive. I think that the pro-Chinese government lobby and the pro-Chuddersphere lobby have maintained their strange, unholy alliance, and I'm starting to see stories that don't make sense. And obviously, these are repeated uncritically on Reddit because they learned absolutely nothing. And so, this story, sort of like, Chinese company gives employees a day off to play Black Myth Wukong. And the premise of the story is the game is of such significance culturally to Chinese people that companies are going to give you the day off work in notorious labor-friendly China to go right, see ya, not working today. Why? Well, Black Myth Wukong's out, and my boss thinks I should play it because it's all about the history of China and mythology. So let's do it. Jewel shockers. They've had a shocker. Chinese company gives employees a day off to play a Black Myth Wukong. Right, okay, well, let's get into it. A Chinese company is giving its employees a day off on August 20th to celebrate the launch of Black Myth Wukong and offer them time to study the game. Spotted by Redditor Difficult Quit 2094. You see the cyclical nature, the cycle of trash. Redditors post garbage, journalists read Reddit, they post news gets posted back on Reddit. At some point, somebody should be going, is this just a big misinformation machine? Or nah, it's fine. Spotted by the Redditor Difficult Quit 2094, the company in question offers its employees a day off to celebrate the launch of the game and also encourages its employees to approach it as a developer when it releases on August 20th. Not every employee will benefit from the day off, though. As the holiday notice states, only those who have pre-ordered Black Myth Wukong or tested the game's performance using the PC benchmark tool are eligible for a day off. Pre-order your fucking copy of the Chinese mythology game and you receive a day off work. What is this? What? Are we fucking real right now? Now, there's the image, okay? So let's go to the original thread. This is the evidence that this definitely happened. Now, I like to file this type of a news story under the clout goblin takes photograph of A4 paper story. Very popular in the modern day and age. There's no mention of which company it is. It's from a dubious Twitter source to begin with, because this individual is like China's so keen, love it over here, one of them. And there's no other details to sort of verify it in any way, shape, or form. I couldn't, based on the information that's been presented, I couldn't go out and verify this. I wouldn't know which company to contact. I wouldn't know which individual beyond this account that is notorious for posting pro-Chinese propaganda. I wouldn't know where to go. I wouldn't. Any other details? Like, can you help me out? This is all it took. And it was in the publications, and it was on Reddit, and everyone was talking about it, and this was getting retweeted. I think DeSoto fucking posted it. Like, listen, whatever. I'm not there. I'm not there to stop these things happening. So, why? Who's doing that? Somebody says that there's a university seal at the bottom. Sure, yeah. Wicked. I could take that seal, right, and then what? People can fake that shit. So anyway, it's like it just could be true, but like if it was, it would have more details. I certainly wouldn't repeat it. But there was this weird thing happening around this game, and so everybody was pulling out all of this culture war shit about how the fucking game was, doing all this super cool stuff. Get this. Let's look at the sales of said game. Black Myth Wukong has sold more than 4.5 million copies across all platforms. And this is according to a Chinese website. Like, if that doesn't sound like a lot, for context, let's think about some of the best-selling games of recent years. Elden Ring is now at, which was released in 2022 now. I know that's incredible to think about. Yeah, it has been out for over 2 years. It's now up to about 25 million as the landmark, and that's post Shadow of Erdtree. This has been out like 3-4 days, and it's done 4.5 million. So it's already like, it's one of the best-selling games like of the year. It's got the potential to fucking just smash the record. It's like fucking crazy. And it got reported that, that number is going up like rapidly. And I'm like, who's buying all of this? Like, really? Well, somebody did answer. Game Discover looked at the numbers of where the sales were occurring, and they said the Steam split was 88% Chinese. This was one of the games that got approved on the Chinese version of Steam. Now that is mental. that is mental. Like 88% of the player base is Chinese. And I was like, that okay, I'm starting to get the picture. On the release day, when I was hitting all these numbers on Steam, a journalist did that thing over on my favorite publication, PC Games N. They did that thing where they went and looked at Steam numbers, and this sort of was verified as to, maybe a lot of the players are Chinese. Black Myth Wukong drops nearly 2 million players in several hours. And there it is. The report is a mess, as you'd expect. It talks about just the gargantuan player count that it had on PC and particularly Steam. And it says, Black Myth Wukong has already started off strong. The action-adventure game garnering a largely positive critical reception. In our review, which awarded the game an 8 out of 10 score, we call Black Myth a striking adaptation of a beloved literary classic that captures the remote surrealism of Chinese mythology, and an imperfect but ambitious action RPG that looks to iterate upon From Software's legacy rather than using it as a crutch. crutch. This premise has translated to a huge Steam player base. Black Myth Wukong quickly becoming one of the most popular games on Valve's platform to date. A quirk of that massive player base, though, is its ability to drop off precipitously in accordance with time zones. I wonder what's going on, guys. I wonder what the fucking big mystery here is. At 2 p.m. UTC, Black Myth reached a peak of 2.2 million concurrent players on Steam. Several hours later, at 9 p.m. UTC, though, its player count had dropped to 290,791. The obvious explanation for this is the strong support that such a high-profile Chinese game, its plot pulling from classic Chinese literature, has in the region. 2 p.m. UTC translates to 10 p.m. China Standard Time, while 9 p.m. UTC is 5 a.m. China Standard Time. Those nearly 2 million players, in short, probably just logged off. All right, so why is this news? Why is this news at all? Paul Tassi made this point. He did a tweet where he said, damn, now the game has gained another 2 million players overnight. What's going on? How can we solve this mystery? And obviously it's just Chinese people going to bed. I'll say it's ridiculous that the disparity is that big, that it's an 88% Chinese player base, particularly given Western games journalists have been talking about this game for a fucking year, about how important and imperative it is, and how we've got to fucking get the studio to apologize. And all. In reality, they've just made a game based on Chinese history and Chinese mythology for Chinese people to enjoy. The Chinese people are enjoying it, divorced totally from the Western culture war bullshit. And yet we, even though there's only 200,000 people playing it in any given one moment in time, which is not big potatoes in terms of Steam audiences, we're still fucking mired in all this back and forth, all of this bullshit. Because we have to be, because it's a big game release. Now, it wouldn't be culture war brain rot if Grums didn't turn up. I don't know what happened. I nearly had him on an episode of the Richard Lewis Show, reached out to interview him one time. This is like years ago, and he didn't want to do it. Because he thought like the platform I was going to use to record would have been unsafe, and he was worried about security concerns. So it's fair enough. We never got around to doing it, but I don't know what's happened to him lately. He's so far off the fucking deep end now. It's like, well, I'm glad we're not putting him on another list with Michael Tracy and Tim Pool and all the other early adopters of the Richard Lewis Show that went on to be, crazy people. Ian Miles Chong, I know, like it was like we had Ian Miles Chong back on when he was like on the show going, yeah, I'm really ashamed that I got mired in the culture war shit, and that I was kind of like really over the top SJW, and I'll never get brainwashed again. And now he's on Twitter every day. The left wants us dead. They want us dead. If Trump doesn't win the election, we're all gonna die. And you're like, you don't even live in America, blood. I'm like. The obvious joke is, no, Ian, the left wants you dead. I don't give a fuck. That's a joke. Listen, he still follows me. I sort of do feel sorry for him. It's like out of the frying pan into the fire. You see this a lot with people who are susceptible to brainwashing, and they're insecure and they just want to belong, and they're in one group, and then they get bullied out of that, and then they find the other group and they go, oh my god, I realise now I was totally wrong to blindly, obediently, subserviently follow that group, and now I'm going to thank you for saving me. Now let me blindly, obediently, subserviently follow you. You see this a lot on like Destiny subreddit, for instance. There'll be people posting going, I blindly followed the alt-right, but now that Destiny has rescued me and opened my eyes, I blindly follow all of his opinions. And you go, mate, you haven't really solved anything. Your opinions might be marginally, nominally better. Well done, but the root problem is still there. Anyway, all of which is to say, Grums is just so far out there now. Like, I mean, I see tweets that it's almost like parody, because you look at them and you go, listen, why would having, for instance, okay, let me give you an example of a bad one before we so I like to couch what I say in in reality. So I don't know if you, are there a lot of people who play RuneScape here or have played RuneScape? I'm sure if you're of a certain generation, like my audience will be, you've all played RuneScape. You know, you're all out there RuneScape, and you're all familiar with RuneScape. You've seen the RuneScape, I mean, you've seen it. We all can compare our fishing levels, yeah. So anyway, RuneScape recently just kind of like changed some aspects of the character creation design, so you can now put pronouns in there, put your preferred pronouns, and you can choose your body type, you know, so you're not just a generic, you know, normal BMI person. You can be fat or thin. That just seems like customization to me, which, you know, seems to be like good. Right, you know, when I play games, I like to role play quite a bit, but generally I also need a tether back to my own character, so I can kind of, you know, sort of, it's kind of a version of me, right? Now that's just how I approach my games. So having the customizability option to not just be completely removed from that reality helps me. You know, helps me connect to games, so I just don't have a problem with it. I remember watching that fat dude, which I can say now because I'm thinner than him for now. I remember that fat dude that was crying about Starfield and saying that they ruined Starfield because they put pronouns in Starfield, and it's just like most games have pronouns because she is a pronoun. So I never understood this. It's like, why are we need pronouns? Like, anyway, so they did it in RuneScape. Now, me, not mired in culture war bullshit, beyond using it for entertainment purposes, I think, yeah, that's good. Grums, modern Grums, not old school Grums, but new terminally online Grums. They just ruined OG RuneScape! Mandatory and unasked for update forces body types and pronouns onto players. They ruined it, guys. It's over. They've just ruined it. They've ruined RuneScape. Ruined. It's over. It's all ogre. You can't play it. Look, this is what they're offering. These are the screenshots he chose to demonstrate ruined. You can now choose between body type A and body type B, offering the freedom to pick either body type without the restriction to gender label. So you want to be a dude with tits or a chick, a flat-chested chick. You can do all of that stuff wicked, yeah. I mean, that's reflective of reality, isn't it? To give you even more room for self-expression, you can now choose a preferred pronoun for your player character from the following options: he, him, she, her, or they, them. You can also continue without selecting a pronoun if that's what you prefer, so you don't even have to do it. It's not mandatory. The game will use the default based on body type, similar to how it has always been. And there it is. They've ruined it! They've ruined it! So I can't ever get, like, mentally, I can't get there. Like, I try, you know, look, you'll find a video on my YouTube channel where I, like, laugh at some SJW. I think I've used the term SJW in, like, 2 or 3 titles back in 2016. We're kind of, like, ridiculing, you know, overzealous college leftists was kind of the meta for content. I'm not saying I was totally above it. I don't think I ever got like this, and I can't understand whatever this is. I don't get it. I just don't know, dude. So anyway, okay, right. So this is just to present the point. So Paul Tassi made that joke that I told you, and this was Grum's take. The new NPC marching orders have come out. Woke, definitely not racist, DEI journalists Paul Tassi and woke grifter Mikey Keefe are now being actually racist by calling out Black Myth Wukong because it's popular with Chinese. Does China not count as real gamers? I don't see how that diminishes the game's success in any way. Even at non-peak, when China is asleep, the game is doing 247,000 users, more than half of Helldiver's peak popularity and 10 times its current, and US hasn't hit the weekend yet for all games sold, even global Western games. China is the biggest market. No doubt Wukong is a cultural phenomenon in China, but trying to say it doesn't count because they are Chinese, as if Chinese gamers are somehow lesser, is the type of casual racism these DEI defenders claim to be against. Hypocrites. Now, I think what's happened there is a bit of an overreaction, isn't it? Like, it's a bit disproportionate. And I do seem to recall there were a group of people we all used to laugh at approximately 8 to 10 years ago. People who used to get really offended over jokes on the internet. And they couldn't take a joke and they wanted to silence. I can't remember what they were called. S. We're getting an S. There was a J in there, wasn't there? W. Wasn't there? And that's what they are now. The people crying about, like, people putting fucking pronouns in games are more pathetic, I think, than the people that couldn't handle edgy jokes ever were. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really fucking embarrassing. Now, as I said, Paul Tassi was making a clear joke. He had to come out and sort of defend it, right? And he's like, look, Jesus Christ. God forbid I make a super obvious joke on here that gets thrown to humorless idiots as some sort of red meat to tear apart. And you realise in that instance, we have absolutely come at full circle. Just as another interesting example of culture war insanity, here's another example that was on Paul Tassi's timeline. Imagine having to correct this stuff. What the fuck are you doing to Tomb Raider? There's a Tomb Raider cartoon on Netflix. This has got to be a joke, dude. Those were some beautiful world-ending artifacts your father had. But you have to acknowledge your white privilege and return them. Just totally not real. just totally. I'm not saying something like this couldn't exist, but the actual dialogue that Paul Tassi corrected, don't make the same mistakes he did. It was nothing. There was no white privilege there. Not this time. Not in Tomb Raider. Culture war. Just weird. Next up, apparently the game is so popular, according to South China Morning Post, that it's driven demand of the PlayStation 5. This is just another story apropos of nothing, just being put out there. The game is so amazing and popular in China that hey, we really want you guys to know that the PS5, which obviously is a slightly older console these days, hasn't really been selling all that much. Now we've got high demand. We might run out. Panic! We might be running out of PS5s. This is a big win for Sony. They need one. Yan Fang, a third-party gaming hardware merchant in Shanghai, said on Wednesday, PS5 offers the best option for those who want to try out Wukong but cannot afford to buy a 40 series NVIDIA display card for their PCs. He added that his bricks and mortar store on Tuesday received more than a dozen inquiries about the PS5. More than 12? Fucking hell. More than 12? More than 12 people want to buy a PS5. Fuck me. That's wild. That's the news. There. Over 12 people asked the dude who ran a store, got any PS5s in? That was it. This is a big win for Sony. They're going to sell 13 PS5s in mainland China. Why is this story here? Why are we talking about this fucking game in this way? Bizarre. There was this as well. This was weird. This got deleted. Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Man, I remember when that used to be good. Do you remember when Rock, Paper, Shotgun? Remember that? When it used to be good? Gone now. Wielding Black Myth Wukong as a culture war cudgel is a disservice to this very shiny and cool cicada. Or do you say cicada? I suppose it should be cicada, really. Sucada sounds like suck harder. we're not allowed to have any fetishization adjacent to my Wukong content, so we'll say cicada. Anyway, this is a opinion piece about the reveal of the now known to be real restrictions on what you can say as a streamer. This journalist, and like I say, it's not significant he wrote this. It's significant that this has been deleted off the website since. Is the article basically says, listen, yeah, those restrictions were pretty weird and fucked up, but actually the game's okay. Right, we'll get rid of that. Can't have that. Right. The online vitriol thrown at press covering the restrictions is revealing too. I've seen it go like this in a few different instances. Black Myth Wukong Studio requests influencers not to include feminist propaganda or COVID-19 references in coverage, reads a Eurogamer headline. Good. Based. Read enough Twitter responses to hopefully show that, for a lot of these silly bellends, free speech was never the issue. Shout out for using the word bellend in a piece of journalism. You're all right. The opposite, in fact. It was always about enacting a chilling effect on what sorts of conversation or critique should be allowed and who should be allowed to feel comfortable having a voice. And then the rest of the article is about a cicada for some reason. So I thought that was odd because that got deleted. And then Reuters, because everyone's written about this. If you type in Black Myth Wukong Culture War, you will get like 40 articles, by the way. I'm going to spare you doing that. But what's this? China goes ape. Oh, Reuters. Rough one. China goes ape over culture-boosting Black Myth Wukong video game. Chinese state media threw its back behind China's most successful single-player video game to date, saying its adaptation of the Ming dynasty, of course it is, the Ming dynasty epic Journey to the West would force Western players to learn more about the country's culture. Well, that's interesting. You're saying the game itself is a vector for propaganda. Okay, well, let's continue. Black Myth Wukong, based on a mythical monkey king from a Chinese literary classic who can shape-shift into humans, animals, and inanimate objects, was being played on Wednesday by 2.2 million concurrent players on Steam. Chinese players in the past have gone through this process of cross-cultural understanding. Now it is the turn of overseas players to learn and understand Chinese traditional culture, said China Central Television. Not really how I recall how it's kind of gone historically. You see, the Chinese players of video games don't go through a process of cross-cultural understanding because your government censors the games. So they never have to understand anything because the government doesn't want them to do that. So, fine though. Drawing heavily on the story of the beloved magical monkey Sun Wukong, who acquires supernatural powers by practicing Taoism, Black Myth Wukong can only be enjoyed if players are familiar. I don't think that's true. Can only be enjoyed if players are familiar with the plot of the 16th century classic, the national broadcaster said. The PC console-based game was launched on Tuesday by Game Science. Their logo is a sperm, a Tencent-backed startup. Well, there we are. To much fanfare on Chinese social media. Hashtags on the video game accumulated 1.7 billion views, nearly as many as the esports awards, on China's X-like microblog Weibo. This release marks a bold foray by Chinese games developers into a market long dominated by Western AAA titles, the official Xinhua news agency wrote in an editorial. With this breakthrough, the default language of a AAA game is no longer English but Chinese. Black Myth Wukong would attract more global players to pay attention to domestic games, said analysts at Shanghai-based Topsperity Securities, adding that companies across a wide range of sectors could expect to profit off intellectual property tie-ins. So, what Reuters have decided is to just apropos of nothing, obviously, is collate all of the quotes from the Chinese media assessment, all of which have concluded it's a really, really good thing, because even though it's 88% Chinese people playing it, the Western people who do want to play it, because they're getting gaslit into thinking it's going to be as good as Elden Ring when it clearly can't be, they're going to learn all about Chinese culture, and they're not just playing a game where it's like, haha, me kill big boss battle as Kung Fu Monkey Man, right? They genuinely think there's going to be some form of engagement from the average gamer, when in reality, what the fucking game has actually done, all it is actually served, is just to serve up another big plate of culture war bullshit, where all the people are arguing over a game that actually only a handful of people are going to play, and actually only going to play it for a handful of time. Like, no one's going to be talking. In the West, obviously it's going to be a big deal for China, I'm not saying otherwise, but no one in the West is going to be talking about this game, except we wouldn't be... We wouldn't be talking about ridiculous, stupid, ill-informed, knee-jerk opinions if we didn't bring your favourite streamer to the table. And so, there's a streamer who has an opinion about this game. Shroud, of course, he says that if it doesn't win the Game of the Year, it's rigged. There you go. It's the Game of the Year, guys, actually. So, very strange overall, I have to say. I don't think I've seen a release like this that's kind of got into this like weird fucked up territory. It's only ever the big ones. It's only ever the ones that actually it's worth talking about. Actually, I'll just show you this, just to give you an idea of how pathetically transparent it is. What websites do these days to capitalize on the traffic is whenever there's a big game release, what they do is this. They flood their website with stuff that isn't reporting, and they don't put it on like the top, like above the fold. They don't put it up there. It's just down at the bottom with all of the things that look like stories, but they're really ads. They're really like for fucking dick pills and fucking whatever, all the other things that I totally don't buy. So you can see, like, it's stuff like this. How long is Black Myth Wukong? Now, what happens is, you see, some people think, I'm thinking about buying a new game. I want to know how long the playthrough is because I want to see if I'm going to get value for money. Or actually, I don't want a game that's going to take 400 fucking hours to see all the aspects of it, like Baldur's Gate 3. I maybe just want a 40-hour game, beginning, middle, end, and never have to replay it. So, I'm going to ask the question. Now, what you do is you type it into Google, and now, if your website has an article that of absolutely no news value, and by the way, everyone has an AI now. I would argue these articles are just no informational value either. But by doing that, you might get to the top of the search engine. And so on the day this was released, every single fucking article was about Black Myth Wukong. It was just Black Myth Wukong, Black Myth Wukong. Look at this. It should be your first Souls like Black Myth Wukong, Black Myth. All of these like questions like how to beat this boss and how to do this and all these like little mini guides, and you can just see it's all designed, all geared to get traffic. And this is why the culture war thing fucking always happens with this. It's what they do. It's basically I can get outrage engagement by adopting a side, adopting a stance. People engage with it, people fucking argue over it, and then we're on to the next thing, and nothing is learnt, and nothing is changed. That's how that works. So, yeah. There we go. Black Myth Wukong. A strange release. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam. I find this like hard to believe that all of these reviews are genuine. What's interesting is when Chinese reviewers review bomb games because they get pissed off, like they did with Total War Warhammer 3 because of a lack of language optimization, that went down to negative for a few days until Steam came in and fixed it, or Creative Assembly made some changes and people switched their reviews back. Then it went to negative just because of their shit DLC. You know, and it was like with Life is Strange 2, having a Tibet flag in there, and Chinese people, this is an insult, and they're all in there. It's kind of interesting that when negative review bombs happen on Steam because of disgruntled Chinese consumers, we go, oh yeah, that's just review bombing. That is so, and then we'll let it last a few days, let them get it out their system. We don't correct the overwhelmingly positive because obviously this game's of cultural significance and not truly necessarily a reflection of whether or not the game is good. I will say this, I do not believe for 1 second this is an overwhelmingly positive 8 out of 10 incredible Souls-like game. I say that as someone who hasn't played it. That is a reflexive knee-jerk game, but it just looks like slop to me. But there we are. So, if I'd been in the culture war, though, I could have milked it for clicks and talked about how they had ruined it. But there we are.